A nationwide election, polling stations that ran out of ballots before voters could cast them, a box of evidence ordered preserved by a court and gone before the judge arrived, and more than 1,000 votes that simply vanished from the count. 8 days after South Korea went to the polls, the body meant to guarantee clean elections is now the story. Tonight, a country that exports its democracy as a point of national pride is asking whether its own vote can be trusted. It began on June 3rd, the day of South Korea's 9th nationwide local elections. By early afternoon, voters in parts of Seoul's Songpa district, Jamsil, Garak, Munjong found themselves waiting in lines that weren't moving. The reason? The polling stations had run out of ballots. At one site, Jamsil 7-dong polling station No. 2, a storage box recovered later, was labeled with the print run 1,900 ballots. That station had 3,856 registered voters. In plain terms, paper had been prepared for just 49.3% of the people eligible to vote there, falling short of the Election Commission's own stated floor of printing for at least 50% of voters. The shortage wasn't isolated to one site. Across Songpa, multiple stations reported the same problem within the same window. The National Election Commission says its internal rule sets a minimum of 50% and argues staff followed that guideline rather than deliberately undersupplying anyone. Critics counter that several stations didn't even clear that minimum bar and are demanding to know how that was allowed to happen in dozens of locations at once. Here is where the story sharpens. 2 days after the vote, with roughly 1,000 police officers deployed, authorities removed ballot boxes from the Jamsil 7-dong site, about 35 hours after polls had closed, pushing through crowds of protesters. Inside, the labeled 1,900 ballots storage box was photographed and became the centerpiece of the controversy. An opposition figure, Reform Party senior member Kim Jung-cheol, petitioned the Seoul Eastern District Court, which granted an evidence preservation order. It covered that ballot box and CCTV footage from 10 Songpa polling stations. On June 10th, the presiding judge arrived in person to seize and seal the box. It was gone. The local Songpa Commission says a waste disposal company collected the box around noon the day before, and that the court's evidence list only reached them at 5:30 that evening, after it was already gone. The commission insists there was no intent to destroy evidence, that the cardboard box carried no legal preservation obligation, and that the print count can still be verified by other means. The judge left empty-handed after 27 minutes. The court is now expected to pursue a formal fact-finding request to the commission over where the box went and what else may be missing. Then came the count itself. In the North Jeolla Education Superintendent race, in Jeonju's Wonsan district, results from one polling station's 1,004 voters were left out of the official tally entirely. Officials say a tabulation error caused one station's results to be entered twice, while another station's, the 1,104, were dropped. The commission says correcting it narrows the gap between the top two candidates from 154 votes to 135, a swing of 19, and does not change who won. But there's a second problem. The North Jeolla Commission spotted the error on June 5th and didn't report it up the chain until June 8th. The explanation offered that the days in between were a national holiday and a Sunday, and staff were exhausted from election duty. A holiday for a missing 1,000 votes. The public response has been immediate and broad. Demonstrators have gathered outside the Olympic Park Handball Arena in Songpa and at the Commission's headquarters in Gwacheon, demanding a revote and structural reform. University student councils across the country have issued a joint statement calling for the Commission to be overhauled. The National Civil Servants Union has gone further, warning it may refuse election duties altogether unless the system is fixed. Criminal complaints have already been filed against former Commission leadership, including ex-chairman No Tae-ak, on allegations of abuse of authority and dereliction of duty, claims the named officials have not been found to have committed and which the courts and any investigators would have to test. The fallout is reshaping the politics of the vote. Opposition parties are pressing hardest, framing the failures as a crisis of trust rather than a clerical accident, and floating everything from a special counsel probe to a rerun in affected districts. Even within the governing camp, the Democratic Party has turned inward, with members publicly second-guessing a campaign they say leaned too heavily on the president's popularity. President Lee Jae-myung was in Europe this week for G7-related diplomacy as the scandal escalated at home. Opposition figures have seized on the timing and on his framing of his own political troubles, accusing him of casting himself as a victim while the integrity questions went unanswered. His office's public response, when it came, was brief. The deeper question hanging over all of it: when ballots run short, a court's evidence vanishes, and 1,000 votes drop out of the count in races where the official margins are thin, does the result still command the public's trust? South Korea's election commission was built to be the referee. Tonight, it is the subject of the inquiry, facing the courts, the unions, the students in the streets, and a simple demand that is getting louder by the day: do it again and do it right. We'll stay on this story as the courts move.